She didn't use swords, she used words. She didn't scream, she whispered, and she destroyed the strongest man in history, Delilah, the woman who destroyed Samson. But was she really the villain, or just another piece in a much bigger game? This story goes far beyond betrayal. It's about strength, purpose, and the price of passion. Delilah, the woman who destroyed Samson. You'll never look at this story the same way again. Get ready. What you're about to see may change the way you love, trust, and protect yourself, because sometimes the greatest enemy is the one you let into your heart. Have you ever trusted someone so much that you ended up losing yourself? Samson trusted, and he paid the highest price. But what if I told you that the most hated woman in the Bible might not be the true villain in this story? Yes, we're talking about Delilah, the woman who didn't use swords but words, who didn't scream but whispered. And with that, she destroyed the strongest man in sacred history. Behind the romance, there was a silent war between divine purpose and emotional manipulation. This video goes far beyond telling the fall of a hero. It will show you how our own choices, when made away from our connection with God, can become our greatest traps. And the most intense part, this might be happening to you right now, and you haven't even noticed. If you think you know this story, get ready to see it with new eyes. Here, strength isn't in the muscles, but in the sacred vow, and weakness lies in the heart. So stay with me until the end, because what happened to Samson might reveal many things you need to understand about your own life. Few know the extraordinary origin of Samson in depth. Even before he was born, he already carried a divine purpose engraved in his existence. His parents, considered barren, received a visit from an angel who not only announced the miracle of conception, but also established a sacred vow. The boy would be a Nazirite from the womb. This vow sealed a special covenant which required consecration, purity, and obedience. It wasn't just a calling, it was a summons from heaven itself. From that moment on, Samson was not just another desired child. He was a direct response from heaven for difficult time. In times when the Philistines oppressed Israel, God was preparing someone with divine strength to break the enemy's yoke. It's like when life places us in situations where everything seems barren, without fruit, without hope. But suddenly, something unnatural happened. It is there in the invisible that vows are made, and this vow of Samson carried eternal implication. Understanding this beginning is like looking at our own story with new eyes. Sometimes we forget that there are greater purposes behind the scenes, even when everything seems still. How many times have you doubted your worth because you didn't see immediate results? Just like Samson, maybe your strength is still being formed, waiting for the right time. And look, when the purpose is activated, no Philistine humiliation or emotional manipulation can hold it back. But after birth, what sealed this strength once and for all? It wasn't just long hair. Those strands were a symbol of a sacred covenant, something far beyond aesthetics or tradition. Samson, as a Nazirite, carried in his hair the visible reminder of his sacred vow with God. Each strand was a living testimony of his divine strength, and even more so, of the connection with God that separated him from the others. Cutting that hair wouldn't just be a change of appearance, it would be a break with the divine purpose. In practice, this shows us how details that seem simple carry a gigantic spiritual weight. Today, maybe the hair of our generation is the devotional time we ignore, or the small decisions that cut our connection with what we believe in. Samson knew keeping that hair was protecting his essence, his mission. And here's a powerful insight. What in your life represents that thread of connection with God? Identify it and preserve it. And here's something interesting. Even with all the strength of a warrior, Samson was sustained by such a seemingly fragile gesture. This proves that it's not what others see, but what's between you and God that sustains you. Many want the strength, but few want to maintain the vow. It's like trying to have results without commitment. It doesn't last. And it's precisely this fragility disguised as strength that makes him so human and so vulnerable to passion. Samson was strong, but the heart, that was fragile ground. When Delilah appeared, she didn't come with swords, but with smiles. And sometimes the greatest enemies come disguised as affection. He, the chosen Nazirite, began to drift away from his connection with God because of a blind passion. It's that old scenario. The divine strength was there, but emotional vulnerability opened gaps where the enemy easily entered. Delilah wasn't just a beautiful woman. She was strategic. She was connected with the Philistine, the very ones Samson had humiliated so many times. But he, guided by emotion, ignored the sign. How many times do we also get involved with people or situations that go against our divine purpose just because we feel attracted? It's like ignoring a danger sign because the view is too beautiful to resist. Be careful. Not all affection is healing. Sometimes it's a trap. And the most curious part is that Samson, with all his strength, felt invincible, but didn't realize he was being disarmed from the inside. While he was winning battles on the outside, Delilah was waging a silent war within him, and she knew exactly where to strike: the emotional. Because when emotional manipulation enters, even the most supernatural strength can fail. But how did Delilah manage to extract the most intimate secret from the strongest man in history? The darkest moment came when Samson fell asleep in Delilah's lap. The one who had already defeated lions and 1,000 Philistines was now vulnerable to the touch of the one who swore love but plotted his fall. She cut his hair, the symbol of the sacred vow, the mark of divine strength, and there the connection with God was broken. It wasn't just a physical cut, it was a spiritual cut. Samson woke up weak and worse, alone. The capture was immediate. The Philistines wasted no time. They blinded Samson and took him to be publicly humiliated. The man who had once been the terror of the enemies became a spectacle in the temple of Dagon. And this shows how quickly someone can go from the top to the bottom of the pit when they lose their covenant with divine purpose. Was his strength in his hair? No, it was in his faithfulness. The hair was just the visible reminder of that. And here's the point. Many times our greatest fall comes after our greatest carelessness. Delilah's betrayal was fatal, but it started with small concessions Samson made to his own conscience. Have you noticed how the enemy doesn't attack you all at once? He slowly pulls you away from God, taking his time. And when you realize it, you no longer have the strength to react. But even blind, humiliated and weak, did Samson still have a chance to reconnect with God? Imprisoned, blind and humiliated, Samson seemed to have reached the end of the line. But it was precisely in that place of pain that something powerful happened. He began to hear once again the voice of God. The one who had lost everything found a new connection with God in the midst of darkness. Samson prayed, and it wasn't just any prayer, it was a cry of repentance, faith, and surrender. The divine strength that seemed forgotten began to pulse again. While he was paraded as a trophy by the Philistines in the temple of Dagon, Samson asked for one last chance. He placed his hands on the temple's columns and cried out for strength, not for himself, but to fulfill his divine purpose until the end. That is redemption. He didn't seek glory. He sought justice. His sacrifice was real. He brought down the temple and died alongside his enemies. It was the end of a cycle and the beginning of a legacy. This story reveals something powerful. No matter how far you've gone, there's still a way back. Redemption doesn't erase the past, but it transforms the end. Samson made mistakes, yes, but he ended up aligned with the purpose he had abandoned. Sometimes the new beginning happens at rock bottom, and the question remains, what about Delilah? Was she just a villain after all? Or is there more to this story than we imagine? Now tell me, how many times have you cut your own hair to please someone who wasn't even part of your purpose? How many covenants have you broken with yourself just to keep someone around? The story of Samson and Delilah isn't just about strength and betrayal. It's about choices. Choices that we all make, consciously or not, every day. And what if your strength is still inside, just waiting for you to reconnect with what called you from the very beginning? What will you do with everything you've learned here today? Will you ignore it? Or will you reflect, change course, and protect your sacred vow with more care? Because the truth is, while you live distracted, the Philistines are still planning. If this made you think, comment below. What part of this story affected you the most? I want to know what touched you inside. And of course, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs this kind of alert. Because if there's one thing this channel will keep doing, it's opening your eyes.